In this video, I'll be getting into every setting I have that makes Final Fantasy XI look as crisp and clean as possible in 2019. There is a ton of room to upgrade settings that are kind of ridiculous for other games because of how old this game is, but it can still look amazing. I've been wanting to share this one for a long time, so let's get right into it. I mean, over all the videos that I've made in Final Fantasy XI, there's a constant theme of at least one or two people always asking, how do you get Final Fantasy XI to look the way that you do? And it's nothing crazy. So I figured I might as well make this video to quick share, the settings that I have, especially if you're jumping back into 11 after a long time or a long hiatus, and you haven't done it in a while. Even some pretty low-end PC hardware can run Final Fantasy XI really well. So let's get all these settings out there so you can tweak them and figure out what you can possibly do. To make 11 look the way that it does on my computer, it really comes down to three separate things. The standard config tool that they provide, registry edits, and a plugin or two from something like Ashita or even Windowwork. If none of that is news to you, I still encourage you to stick around to the end for my thoughts on the HD texture packs for Final Fantasy XI and why I haven't been using them. As always, if you're new here, this is Hunt for Games, sharing my tips and passions for classics like Final Fantasy XI, as well as jumping on new games that I hope are going to be my next great addiction. If you've played classics like Final Fantasy XI, EverQuest, or other online RPGs, consider subscribing. And if you've been here before, welcome back. But let's get right into those crispy resolution tweaks. All right, so I know this is a little bit of a different format, but I figured I'd just walk you through this because honestly, I don't really know a better way to do it. So first off, if you've never seen this tool, step one for making Final Fantasy XI look amazing on your computer. This is the Final Fantasy XI config tool. If you're opening it up from Steam, you actually go into the Steam play button, and this is one of the three options that'll show up. You should probably fire this off before you open up 11. In fact, you can't use it while 11 is open. The wonders of the PS2 era of gaming. Anyways, first thing, check off Mipmapping. Mipmapping is a filtering technique, and any modern hardware can run it without even breaking a sweat, so I definitely encourage it. Full screen mode, they do have a full screen borderless windowed mode. I encourage that version. I usually set that in the registries, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But regardless, next page, screen size. Overlay graphics resolution, you want this to be the resolution of your machine. In my case, it's 1440p, which does help it look a little bit crisper, obviously a little bit cleaner. But for you, maybe 1920 by 1080 or whatever. Menu resolution, this is really personal preference. The menu resolution is anything overlay, obviously the menus, the text. Unfortunately, it's all basically the same rendering size, and you're just scaling it to different. You can't have a 1920 by 1080 crispness on your text or menus without it being super small. It will always be the size that's tied to the resolution. I don't know how else to explain that any better. Point is, to kind of mimic what it was like playing on the PS2, not exactly, because the PS2 menus were enormous on those old, 4x3 screens. I try to keep it at 1366 by 768. Some people like it a little bit bigger with like 1280 by 720. A lot of people like it smaller, like 1920 by 1080 to match the size of your monitor. Any bigger than that, if you actually go to 2560 by 1440, I think it's going to get kind of hard to read. It'll be too small, but it really is personal preference, so whatever works for you. Try out different stuff. Background resolution, usually you set this as the highest you possibly can. We're going to change this in registries in a little bit though, so they only offer options by squares or by your resolution. I personally think your pixel by pixel resolution is a better look. Otherwise, you're kind of stretching pixels in a square ratio to a 16 by 9 monitor, assuming you still have a 16 by 9 monitor, but that is the most common standard these days. But again, I will be tweaking this in the registries in a little bit, so hang out for that. Textures, uncompressed. None of these textures are anywhere near even the most simple of games that we play these days, so maps, uncompressed. Fonts, uncompressed. I have heard problems with the high-quality fonts. I'm not really sure what those are, but I heard they weren't really done well in Final Fantasy XI, and for as long as I can remember, I've stuck to uncompressed. You don't want these to be compressed, though, because that actually it's decreasing the streaming file size, I think, is the benefit there that can overall stress your computer less if your computer was like a total potato. But again, Final Fantasy XI is so old, it's really not a big deal. We can totally do uncompress and handle streaming those textures completely. I think I'm explaining that correctly. Somebody correct me in the comments if I actually don't understand how that works. Bump mapping, yes. This adds the tiniest amount of what I like to call like flavor to the textures. It makes it look like it almost might be a real situation. Final Fantasy XI did this in like the most basic of way. So it just gives you a little bit more like, oh, maybe that's a real surface. Now, Final Fantasy 11, the textures are so bad on a lot of the surfaces that it doesn't really matter, but I do consider it to be an improvement. Environmental animation, smooth, definitely. Sound, I think the number of sound effects you can actually kind of blast up high, but that may have an effect on your CPU. If you really are kind of like running a really kind of older computer with a minimal CPU, you probably wouldn't notice this. So it's up to you. Miscellaneous, enable hardware mouse cursor. As with all other games, I'm pretty sure the hardware mouse cursor will look much better. It's a cleaner. It's not a software mouse. It's tied directly to your mouse movement. But in theory, is a little bit more processing power. That's up to you. I always turn it on. The simplified character creation visuals. I think that's for the character creator. I don't even think that's for anything else. Graphic stabilization, I think, is for very low-end PCs. I don't ever select it. I don't think you have to worry about it. And then we've just got miscellaneous too for other random stuff. So that's just to kind of set the defaults in your registry. Those settings all get set here. Now, the way that I got here was by going to the Final Fantasy Encyclopedia Fandom.com wiki graphics guide. I've used this for years. I've seen other versions of this. They go into about the same amount of detail, explain it a little bit differently, but overall, it's the same information. This has always been great. Up here, it'll explain where and how to find this particular registry section. To get to your registry edit tool on a Windows machine, type in regedit, regedit. That'll pop it up here. If you're getting nervous about this, just remember it's really not a big deal. It's essentially just text values. As long as you're in the Final Fantasy 11 section, nothing can really go wrong. If you set a resolution wrong, the game might not load, but it's not going to break anything. Anyways, and then I kind of just work my way down and follow their guide, their explanation for what I generally set. Now, I can walk you through what I always focus on, because I've done this a couple times where I've set it up on a new computer and I quick run through and just hammer out a couple settings. So this guide will explain somewhere certain settings. 0 is Mipmapping. 1 is on, 0 is off. 4 is like extreme. They mentioned that, I think, down here. There is a difference between 1 and 4. As it's mentioned here, beyond 4, you don't really see all that much. It kind of adds a little bit of a level of detail adjustment throughout the range of vision. It's more for distant textures, distant effects. But I usually like to set it to 4. That's the recommended like highest that you go before you start not really seeing any difference. There's no real impact to performance that I've ever seen. 01, 02 are both referencing your standard resolution of your desktop. Leave them at whatever setting you want. That is your monitor's resolution. I highly recommend just leaving it at the base, either 1920 by 1080, 2560 by 1440, 4K if you have it. The next resolutions, 3 and 4, are where things get a little exciting. I've tried a bunch of different settings. Final Fantasy 11 by default offered a square resolution, so like 1024 by 1024, 4096 by 4096, and that is because of how they just originally used to render the background of Final Fantasy 11 for the PS2 and Final Fantasy 11 on the PC when it was initially released. Bare minimum, I recommend you match your other resolution. There's no reason that your background rendering shouldn't have a same pixel height and pixel width of your monitor. Essentially saying I've got 1 pixel for the monitor per little pixel of the image that I'm rendering for Final Fantasy 11. It'll just pair up nicely. It looks really clean. It looks really nice. But because Final Fantasy 11 is so old, it doesn't really take a lot of graphical processing power. If you have even a standard graphics card, double it. Yeah, I've always gone in here and doubled the standard resolution to twice my monitor's resolution, which in this case is 5120 by 2880, twice 2560. Make sure you're in the decimal setting for these. Many of these are hexadecimal. The standard keys of 1 off, 0 on, that was backwards, 0 off, 1 on, hexadecimal. Anything that's a specific resolution value, it's really just 1 through 4, and then down here 37 and 38, which I'll get to in a little bit. Those are decimal values. So change it to decimal, plug in your resolution, etc. Double the resolution. Out of all the things that I do, this is the biggest effect on my overall visual fidelity. It looks amazing. Your whole, all of the textures for clothing and equipment, different aspects of the environment just look a little bit cleaner, a little bit more detailed. It's amazing. If you get nothing out of this video except this, still a win. This is perfect. All right, keep going down. Most of this stuff really comes down to the stuff that we already said in the config. So yeah, I guess I could have simplified this a lot by just saying double your background resolution in the registry editor. Mipmapping to 4 is nice. You'll definitely notice it, but I mean, this is the key one. So final thing I mentioned that I do is I do have a couple plugins for Ashta is what I use right now. But really, the only one that I do that actually improves visual performance is A, the /FPS plugin, the frame rate enhancer, and B, draw distance. The frame rate enhancer, Final Fantasy XI is historically locked at 30 frames per second. The beautiful art direction, the overall design of the game makes that work really well. Ashta bumping that up to 60 frames per second is a beautiful thing to see if you appreciate frame rate, so I definitely encourage you to at least try it. I think it comes standard with most of the Ashta installations. For honestly, Google Ashta Final Fantasy XI. The installation of that is not too complicated, and I would butcher it. The guides that are offered online are probably far superior. I can link you to one of the websites that I have used to install that before. And then once it's installed, you just type /FPS 1 to indicate that you want it to run at 60 FPS /FPS 2 for it to be 30 FPS. And then draw distance. Final Fantasy XI historically has a very short draw distance for the size of the world. Now, install that plugin the same way that you install any other plugin in Ashta. Again, plenty of guys out there. Many Ashta installations come with it by default, so not a big deal. And then you just type in /draw distance space and then a number to indicate what you want to set it to. A lot of people will say 20 or 99 to go the full distance of the world. I don't recommend this. I tried it for a little while and it was bugging me and I couldn't figure out why. The issue is that things in the way far out distance, stuff that you could never even get close to seeing before, looks as crisp and as clean as if it was right next to you. Because of the nature of how Final Fantasy XI renders, and you've taken away all the little tricky effects that it does for adding in like a filter as you get further and further away. If you set it to like 4, you can see way further than you could before, but you still get like a little bit off in the distance. There'll be that haze over some of the textures, and then the further it goes, the haze is a little deeper, and you get that like fog of Vanadil. I feel like it's important to maintain some of the artistic design, some of the choices. It's sort of the same. If you've ever played an emulation of an N64 game, there was fog all over N64 games to prevent you from being able to see stuff that hadn't loaded yet like 20 feet away. If you've ever seen somebody turn it off, it kind of looks weird because that was an artistic design choice of how to, handle the technical limitations of the N64, but it gives you kind of this fog of like, I don't really know what's out there. Yeah, you know what's out there? Nothing. The game hasn't rendered it yet. But in your mind, you're like, I don't know, it could be anything. Final Fantasy XI does a similar effect. It makes distant textures feel a little bit hazier, a little bit farther away, and stuff beyond that, you're like, I can't see it at all. Maybe it's just too hazy. I can't see that far. In fact, it's just not being rendered. But anyways, point being, I think Draw Distance 4 is that perfect middle ground where I can see a lot more, but you still get that haze effect on some of the distant textures. Personal choice. You can always set it up to be 20, 99, or even back to 1 or 22. And you can even set it to 0, which is freaking hilarious, because you basically set the rendering distance to 0, and it's just your character, like a few menu items and a blank space of fog. But guys, that's really it. I don't do anything crazy to make Final Fantasy XI look amazing. I've just followed this guide for years, tweaking it higher and higher as my PC hardware has gotten stronger and stronger over time. But really, that's all. Final Fantasy XI is an amazing looking game. It's all the art design. It's all the choices that they made when making it. I just tweak a few resolution things to kind of help it on its way. Let me know in the comments if you thought that was helpful. Now for the HD texture packs and why I haven't been using them. I know a lot of people would have come to this video saying like how to make Final Fantasy XI look the best it possibly can. First thing he's going to talk about is the HD texture packs. There's a reason I didn't. I finally downloaded them and I tried them out. Some of them, so cool. I love what's been done to Juno. The Mog houses look really cool. Super deep textures on the rugs and the wood on the walls. Juno has some of the the Juno symbol that's carved into that big stone pillar looks really detailed and amazing. I didn't even know what it looked like before. I didn't even really notice what it was. Stuff like that looks so cool. Certain zones, Surta for instance, I don't know. I don't know if it's just like a trick of my brain, but the texture density is denser because more detail was added for the more higher resolution texture than was in the original. And because of that extra detail, I feel like certain colors are a little different than I would have expected. A little darker in some areas, maybe a little lighter in some areas, as like there's just more detail packed into that section of pixels, if that makes any sense. And yeah, it's a lot crisper, and you can see it. It's not the blurry kind of like PS2 texture mess that everything sort of is made of. But some zones just kind of felt off to me. Perfect example is Valkyrie Dunes. Known issues with Valkyrie Dunes. It doesn't work too well with the... there's a plugin that comes with the HD texture pack, one of those EMD, what is it called? EDM, electronic dance music. I forget the name of it. It's a reshade tool that changes some of the contrast and filtering of Final Fantasy XI to enhance the overall look. And with Valkyrie Dunes being as bright as it was, there's some fanciness going on there. Point is, Valkyrie Dunes just looks different. Now, a lot of people they thought it was too blinding before. It's got darker sands. The sky's a little bit darker. It's not quite as blindingly bright. But like, to me, Valkyrie Dunes is Valkyrie Dunes. If it's not piercing your eyeballs with bright white, I can't even see the horizon kind of focus, it's not quite the same, you know? Personal choice. Personally, I just was so tied to the original look of Final Fantasy XI, I couldn't imagine it being any different. I tried it for a little bit, and I just kept going back. I encourage you to check it out for yourself. There is a way to install it with the tool like asked you to load it via command and not overwrite the DATs that you downloaded from the game itself. I encourage you to try it that way because you can like kind of turn it on. I think you can only turn it off and on when you're zoning, but you turn it on, zone into a zone you're interested in, see if you like it. A lot of people love it. I haven't checked out every zone. I've only checked out some of the zones I've seen. Some I've liked, some I haven't. I turned it off to kind of just keep it like fresh everywhere and whatever, but I'd be curious what your thoughts are. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. I realize it's a different format of video. Let me know what you thought of this format. Do you want to see more guides like this as I kind of just like walk through what I'm doing on my computer while I'm talking to you? Or was it too rambling, too slow? Anyways, I would love to know your favorite Final Fantasy XI tweak to make graphics look amazing. And what do you set your menu resolution at? Do you keep it more close to the PS2 era? Or do you get it to that crisp, small, like 1920 by 1080 of the modern day? I would love to hear your thoughts. Definitely check out next video coming out every week on usually Saturdays right now. And if you haven't, check out some of the other videos I've done on Final Fantasy XI. I freaking love this game. I can't stop making videos about it. So I will otherwise see you guys all in the next one. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more videos like this, think about subscribing. And if you already have, don't forget to click that little bell next to the sub button to get notified when new videos go live. Hit me up in the comments with your thoughts on this video, or come hang out and chat with me on Twitch every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And definitely look me up on Twitter or Instagram and Hunt for Games to keep up with what else I've got going on. See ya.